Hello, my name is John Teply, and I have the great pleasure to be talking with Carol Cassidy today. She started out as a scientific illustrator. She got her BFA at Stony Brook and her MFA at Empire State. And
Well, actually,
she's
it wasn't an MFA, but it was an art degree.
okay. So it was an advanced art degree at
Yeah.
Empire State.
Yeah.
And she's had a very interesting time of it. Everything from being at a nuclear research facility to the marine facility at Stony Brook. She taught graphic design. Now, where did you teach graphic design at?
At SUNY Cobleskill.
At SUNY Cobleskill. And she's done she's been to a lot of amazing places. Her work has taken her most recently at the Botanical Gardens. And now she's kind of switching gears. Carol is getting away from the deadlines of scientific illustration, and she's working more with fine art now. And anyways, we have the great pleasure to have her as part of the 7th Generation Project, which will be at Lincoln City Cultural Center from July 13th through the 17th. Whew, how are you doing, Carol?
I'm doing well.
Well, good. So that seems like quite a leap from a whole career of scientific illustration, and now you're doing something quite different. Could you tell me what are the differences, and how has your approach changed?
Part of the difference is that I used to do a lot of my illustrating digitally. And as a matter of fact, I just completed, just before COVID, I completed a mural covering a tank at the Oregon Coast Aquarium. That they were changing it over to a coral reef, and
Right.
so I did it digitally.
Which was quite large too.
It was 7 feet by 17 feet.
Yes.
So and that had a background. A lot of scientific illustrating, what you're trying to do is convey the information about a piece. You're trying to do what a photograph can't do because of limitations of focal points and things like that. That what you're trying to do is to relay information about the subject that you're doing, and often you don't put a background on it, and your goal is to be as true to the object as possible. And of course, if you're doing a dinosaur or something, that's pretty hard to do. So you have a lot more leeway.
But boy, is that fun though, right?
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah. So the switch to doing fine art is I still am pretty realistic, and so my reason for doing the piece is to show what I feel about the piece rather than giving an accurate blow-by-blow description of everything there.
Sure.
So it's more of an emotional response to the object that I'm drawing, or landscape or whatever.
So now what are some of the strategies that you use to paint feelings as opposed to just painting a frog or a scapula?
Right. I think the use of color, that color is very subjective when you are not trying to depict what is actually in front of you. So you brush strokes also, that you can be more free. I do watercolors, and so um, it is much easier to take liberties with what's happening within an object, to have bleeds and all kinds of things inside of something that you're doing.
So it sounds like you're enjoying the unexpected elements
Yeah.
that can happen with the materials, and of course part of that is to recognize the value of something that you have no control over.
Yes, because I do watercolor with scientific illustration, and I'll do a very light layer and then another layer over that and then a layer over that. And I can have 15 layers of watercolor, and it is very controlled and very, there are no mistakes, there are mistakes, but you won't know it. So it's so by doing that, I got to know my materials really, really well. And so my mistakes are more controlled mistakes than you might think, because it's something that I want to do, and it may not turn out exactly the way I think it should turn out, but because I approach it in a more scientific way.
So we're talking about say a landscape right now. Is that
Uh-huh.
right?
Right. So if I see uh well, first of all, I have to decide what my palette is going to be. And generally I stick to a warm or a cool palette, and don't mix the two except for brown shades that that even though you're going from a warm palette to a cool palette, that's the color you want. And so especially like greens of trees and stuff like that, it's nice to say you're sticking to a warm palette or a cool palette, but actually whatever you need to do to get the job done.
That's always it, and
Yeah.
and it's always a mystery too, because
Right. It's always a mystery.
it'll be like a flick of unexpected color someplace, and it makes
Right.
all the difference.
Right. Yeah.
So you start with your palette is generally warm or cool,
Right.
and the main place that you mix that up is in browns and grays.
Yes. Yeah, generally. Because if you mix a warm blue with a cool yellow, you don't get the right green, There's a book out there, Blue and Yellow Do Not Make Green, and it's certainly true when you're mixing your warm and cool colors, but knowing that, then you just go with what you're used to, it's a more predictable result in spite of surprises.
So did you ever like load up a brush with color and just go and
Ah! But I have loaded up a brush with color and dropped it into another color and let it bloom,
yeah,
But,
yeah.
but that would be really scary.
Well, yeah, and totally out of control. But
Yeah, right. Yeah. So what would that be like? I
now,
will try it though.
oh, exciting! I like hearing that.
Yeah.
So another media that you use is silver point,
Yes.
which
Yes.
I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because in most medias, you get these solid dark shapes and lines.
Right, right,
Where with silver point, it's always mysterious. At least that's my impression when I see a silver point
right.
drawing. It just seems like it's there's something mysterious about it, and the hard lines that don't exist actually in nature, but we make them.
Right.
You know, it's not all as hard. You know, could you tell me a little bit about your interest in silver point?
It is sensual. When you are drawing with a piece of silver in your little holder on it, you have to use prepared paper because it won't work on just regular paper. And you start drawing, all of a sudden it's dark out and it's like, oh, I guess a couple of hours have passed, and it's just this intimate, total concentration and total pure joy of line and form. And it's just it's just weird. It's really amazing. It is hmm I can't think of anything except seductive. It's the silver just tells you what you have to do.
Interesting,
So, and
interesting.
then you wait another 5 years and you have a dark drawing because it oxidizes just like your grandmother's silverware. And so eventually it becomes this really beautiful sepia color. So if you look at all of Leonardo's drawings, he, m- everybody in the Middle Ages used silver point for their drawing because they
Huh.
only invented graphite in the early 1600s. And so that was just the thing that you use, just like you pick up a pencil today.
Leonardo's an interesting person to bring up, at least in my view, for a scientific illustration, because I, like I look at his work, and it was like he was one of the first, and it's pretty hard to beat him. Because everything is just so clear,
Right.
and I can't imagine being in a room with a rotting body and getting that kind of clarity,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
drawings. It's but that was all silver point.
Yeah. It was all silver point. So, and you can't erase silver point. That's the other thing. And because you're using a prepared surface, it's really hard to make an underdrawing and then do the silver point over it because you can't, depending on which surface, there's different kinds of substrates you can make or use. And a lot of them you can't erase. So you can't like make a pencil drawing underneath it and then do silver point over it. So it's quite challenging, quite interesting.
No, that sounds really interesting. Now you also tint your silver point too. Is
Yeah,
that true?
that is true. Um, I grind up pastels and then use a paintbrush and paint the pastels onto the silver point. So, so then you get the color of the silver point, but you can't really draw with pastels on the silver point because it's too much and too heavy, and you don't have a light enough hand to do that. So you paint it on with paintbrushes.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So you actually do the whole art history, because you're at Silver Point, but then also you do work on the computer.
Right.
You did a beautiful piece for the Oregon Aquarium at Waldport. Is it Waldport or Newport?
Newport.
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 Uh-huh.
Uh, and so could you talk about the process, about how that was created?
The Newport coral reef.
The 7-foot by 17-foot mural.
Right. I got a commission to do that. It was to cover a tank that they were changing out. It used to be, I don't know, Pacific kelp or something. And they took that all out and put in fake coral, and they made a coral reef exhibit out of it. But while they were working on that, they covered the tank, and so I made an illustration that looked like I thought the tank should look when when they unveiled it. So, I mean, they gave me guidance on it, but so what I did was I painted 6 fish and a couple of pieces of coral, and took some photographs of coral that I had, and made it in Photoshop 1-to-1. So it was this huge file. It was a 7-foot by 17-foot file in Photoshop, and it had 48 layers in it. And from those 6 fish, they were all schools of fish. So I made 6 schools of fish floating all over the tank, and just did the coral in the background, and then digitally just manipulated everything. And from my 6 watercolor fish that I scanned in, I made many schools of fish.
So your process was mostly scanning, and there was a little drawing that you did. And
Well, I painted the fish, and then the background coral I either created with just digitally, or I took the backgrounds of pictures of
Yeah.
that had coral in the background, and multiplied them and did all kinds of things and manipulated them. I had to bring it into Illustrator, because the problem with doing large pieces, there's 2 things: raster and vector. And Photoshop is a raster program, and Illustrator is a vector program. And so to illustrate it, I brought it into Illustrator, but Illustrator makes these huge files. So in order to reduce the file size, I had to bring it back to Photoshop and change it back into a raster file.
So you have experience from the very beginnings of when we started drawing and painting to
Right.
what we do as drawing and painting to digitally making images.
And also from the beginning of computer illustration, because my first Mac was one of those little ones with the tiny screen.
Oh, I remember that. I do.
And the inside of it was silk screened with all the people who worked on it.
So through your career, you haven't stayed with one way of making an image. You've gone to different things.
Yeah.
I think from Silver Point to Photoshop to traditional painting.
And I used to do a lot of pen and ink also, which helped when I switched to Silver Point, because basically it's doing pen and ink with silver. So
now
matching.
Now, do these different styles inform each other, or are they kind of separate?
No, they all inform each other. So, yeah.
So, excuse me, I'm gonna cough here for a second. Excuse me. So, can you give can you give an example of how Silver Point has informed Photoshop? Is that possible?
No, not directly. But silver point informs my watercolor because sometimes when I'm doing trying to make something round or something, I'll do cross hatchings or hatch marks
Yeah.
in my watercolors to give it shape. And that is cross hatching from pen and ink and from silver point. So so all of my techniques can kind of run into each other. And the same with the pastels on the silver points. It's a similar approach that I would take if I was going to put watercolors on the silver point. So
Nice. When you were looking at a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper, what are some of the first thoughts that you have?
I never look at a blank canvas without knowing what I'm going to do already. So so I
So
don't.
there is no blank canvas. It's
Yeah, there are no
it's
blank
already
canvases.
started.
There's just stuff that I haven't put anything on yet. So, so the first thing I think is composition and figure out how I want to portray the thing that I am looking at. Or I usually have a whole bunch of reference material in front of me. And often I'll do my composition on the computer and then do a printout of that and then use that for my painting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Very nice.
So especially doing botanical illustrating, these plants never really cooperate with you, you know, they're
I
they're
know.
busy.
Yeah, and the sun too, and the light. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll take a couple of specimens and on the computer make sort of mold my perfect flower or whatever leaf. You know, the leaves, they always get in the way. So I'll move leaves around because what you want is contrast. So if you have a light flower, you want to have a dark leaf behind it, you know. And so I'll manipulate all that in the computer and then do an illustration. As opposed to fine art, which I also you compose by computer, but I'm not that precise or anything. I'm mostly doing reference points and stuff with fine art.
Now something that I think impresses me is how whether you're doing a single leaf or an egret, it seems to me like you particularly love birds, but
Yes,
uh,
a lot of birds.
but all of it has this quality of harmony or beauty, like you're going for something in that regard. You know, like a leaf is not just a leaf; it's like something in motion.
Right.
You know, and it's like the detail seems to be as much about a bigger picture as it is about the leaf.
Uh-huh.
Get- get-
You,
get- get-
you
get-
kind of fall in love with your subject while you're drawing it. You know, it's like, this is so beautiful. You know, it's just
Yeah, and it's just a leaf.
right. Yeah, yeah. So
Now, how? So in painting or in creating artwork, uh, what about expressing feelings? In intangible things like feelings, emotions, spiritual experiences. Can you talk a little bit about the capability of art to address those kinds of things?
sure. there's nothing like, um, let me put it this way. I don't encourage my students to work from a photograph with, if that's the only thing they know about what they're looking at. You can't really express love, I guess it is, for whatever it is, without feeling it. And going out, the project that I'm doing for you is Driftwood Beach, which it turns out I walk to Driftwood Beach about maybe once a month or so for the last 6 years. So, and it's one of my favorite places.
That's amazing.
But I know what the wind feels like in my face, and I know what the the sand is actually squeaky when you walk on it. It goes, and there are all these processes that that make Driftwood Beach, and particularly there's this stream that comes down, and if you don't have the right shoes on, you're going to get your feet wet trying to get to the other side. So, and there's this beautiful cliff there also, and the sounds, sometimes eagles will be flying overhead, and there's just all of these things going on. The plovers are nesting there. I think they're about done nesting now, but it's just this huge dynamic, and you can't make a painting that, I guess the word is stayed. You can't do a static painting when there's so much going on. And the more you know your subject, the
Yeah, yeah.
more you can try to convey that feeling, the waves lapping up. And the Pacific Ocean is right there. This little stream runs into the Pacific. And
You know,
my
I,
dog is usually napping next to me.
and I think all that marvel and all of that experience, if as artists, if we can help people connect to that,
Right.
it helps us to realize the value that that places have,
Yeah.
and it's all right there, the squeaky sand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the other thing about living on the coast is that the weather is constantly changing. Although not lately, it just seems to be raining constantly. But
Yeah.
usually, it's always an adventure. You'll start out. I'll be walking to Driftwood Beach, and it's just gorgeous and the sun is shining, and I turn around to go back and there's a thunderstorm waiting to get me wet. So there's always this dynamic going on with the elements, and so it's always exciting to be experiencing that. And so that's what I hope to convey in my painting. So,
Wow. No, I mean, it's a formidable task for art to convey what the artist is hoping that
right.
we can convey. So
Yeah.
well, I've been talking with Carol Cassidy, and you can see her work as she will be at the Lincoln City Cultural Center from July 13th through the 17th. And we will have an amazing outdoor exhibition in which for the Seventh Generation Project, we're creating a 2-foot by 1 mile mural of every mile of California, every mile of Oregon, every mile of Washington. We won't have the full mile, but it's pretty big. It's like maybe a third of a mile, which is pretty impressive. So
Pretty impressive.
well, thank you so much, Carol. Do you have any last words?
Keep art alive.
We will try to do that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for now. And I hope that all those that everybody that's viewing this, that they will meet us at Lincoln City Cultural Center and check it out and come meet Carol. So bye for now and until next time.
Great. Nice talking to you.